This is Today in Money. I'm Jim Goddard. My guest is Mark Leibovit, editor and publisher of the Leibovit VR newsletters, also known as vrtrader.com. He's speaking to us from Arizona. Welcome back to Today in Money.
Thanks for having me. I'm here. Enjoy doing it.
Mark, we're going to have a lunar eclipse this evening. Is that going to affect the markets?
It always does in some way, one way or another. And we're at a big cycle time frame in terms of a lot of things unfolding here, both in terms of my own cycle work, and you got the lunar event. And, this has been an active month. We had a solar eclipse a couple of weeks ago. And right now we've got a bunch of activity on the sun. Apparently, according to spaceweather.com, there's one particular sunspot which has produced already 7 M-class solar flares. And they have pictures of it on site. And then when that happens, energy heads our way. So, yep, it definitely has an impact. We've got the autumnal equinox coming up in the third week of September. And that's around the time the Federal Reserve supposedly has their next big meeting. And, of course, the big story everybody's talking about, which, frankly, I'm ignoring, is the Jackson Hole presentation by Kevin Warsh tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. My comment has been ignore it and just look at the beautiful scenery, because he's not going to say anything anyway. He can't. He won't do anything until if he's going to do anything until the September meeting, and it's just a lot of anxiety over a non-event. And what's happened in terms of the U.S. economic structure and activity this past week has been really over the top, with our Secretary of Treasury, Bissett, announcing billions and billions of dollars of bond buybacks. If there's ever reason to own gold and to disbelieve in the strength of the U.S. dollar, this has been the time. Another bailout is underway, and why they do that? Because of the interest rates going up. So we're buying back our own bonds. I mean, it's just a matter of time till the whole thing crumbles. And, a lot of this has to do with the cyclic picture that's happening now when you think about all the cyclic activity, why this bond purchase occurred at the time, and the ineptitude of not only the Federal Reserve, but the U.S. Treasury and our Congress, and the situation that we've gone into. No wonder China has been accumulating gold. And that's why one of the reasons I came out with that $38,000 projection, which apparently others have agreed with. I've seen it in other places, so maybe we all came to the same thing at the same time. But I think China itself had indicated that was a target that they were thinking about. The question is whether we'll be able to continue to own our gold if that happens, whether it'll be confiscated. I mean, there's so many variables out there. But everybody's focusing on, NVIDIA. I mean, it's just insane what our mentality of Wall Street is. I'm looking at geocosmic events. I'm looking at cycle projections. I'm looking at the activity of the government. What's happening to the U.S. dollar? What's happening just to our political system, and not to mention the geocosmic system. There's so many things going on right now. It's a very tumultuous time, and as I mentioned last week, and again, we can touch on it right now. We got all these geocosmic and volcanic activity going on around the planet. Big disasters, really all over the place. I'm not here just to panic and talk about things that are just not important and not happening. That's not really me at all. I'm just reporting what's happening, which is ignored elsewhere. I mean, we're having a huge catastrophic flood in Tibet. 1,000 people are dead, several hundred missing, and apparently there are a lot of foreign visitors there that are missing. We're in Tibet at the time. You see some videos of it, just incredible. We've got Algeria wildfires going on now, even in Canada. As you know, there's been higher wildfire activity, though apparently it's being subdued. There's a big fire in Nevada. There's a big fire in Texas. Indonesia has Borneo fires going on now. There's actually an Indonesia earthquake aftermath going on right now. There's global flooding everywhere. Italy, China, Guinea, France, Spain, Thailand, Vietnam. Extreme heat and drought continues to plague Europe. And, the volcanic watch is important. As I mentioned off air, and I'll mention it again, I think we discussed this last week, one of the great seers of all time, psychics, was a name named Edgar Cayce, which rings a bell, I'm sure, to everybody. Though he wasn't 100%, he never took a nickel for any of his forecasts and activities. You can't claim he was some type of fraud trying to deceive people by any stretch. If he got something wrong or overlooked something that was unintentional, I think thousands and thousands of forecasts, and so many came to pass. And I can list those at some future broadcast. Many have come to pass. And the one that strikes with me, since I focus so much on the geocosmic, and I have more and more as time goes on, is very briefly, is that one of his forecasts was when volcano Etna in Italy is active, which still is. It's slowed down a little bit. And apparently, according to one of his predictions, if Mount Pelée in Martinique also ignites at the same time, that could be a trigger for either a global continental shift or a polar adjustment of some kind, and some type of huge flooding on the western part of the United States, the whole West Coast, and potential other disasters on the planet. So far, all these pieces haven't come in, but we're still seeing a lot of, volcanic activity right now. The big active volcano in Russia, I can't even pronounce the name, Leibovit or Leibovit, Krakatoa in Indonesia. These are all active now. Another one, Kerang Jatang in Indonesia, Kilauea in Hawaii, of course, the Mount Etna and so forth that I mentioned. So, these are things that I pay attention to, including what's happening if they were intersecting a lunar event as we are tonight. And a lot of my annual forecast and cycle work is based on a lot of this stuff. And basically it's saying now it's time to exit the market. You got to be careful. It may or may not be related to the midterm elections, or what the U.S. Treasury is trying to do and bail out U.S. debt by buying bonds, or whether there's some other, extreme event, maybe geocosmically going to affect us. But something is brewing here. So time to exert caution and, watch out for any falling meteors.
What's going on in the crude market with the on-again, off-again closure of the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, we still need crude oil. The world depends on it. Most of the cycle work that I've been tracking said it was going to remain elevated for quite a period of time. Many of the best investments have been the oil companies, not so much oil itself, since they make a lot of money anyway. There's so much technology out there, Jim, that we have either uncovered through reverse engineering extraterrestrial craft, or developed on our own, or both, that could eliminate the need for crude oil. We have the ability to generate energy, much like Nikola Tesla talked about decades ago, like transmitting energy through the earth at no charge, which he demonstrated, and much of that was confiscated by the government after he passed away. The truth is we have the ability to generate infinite energy, don't need crude oil. We don't even need probably nuclear. There's probably things even beyond that I've been researching that have been available to us, that it's just really amazing. So the question is when all this realization will come, and maybe it takes a big natural disaster, or unfortunately some big war to change things in a way that need to be changed. But right now, crude oil everybody's dependent on. Reserves have been depleted, as you know, and have to be refilled. And since we're still on the old crude oil cycle. I keep thinking about that scene in the famous movie Back to the Future, where the professor comes back from the future and he opens his hood and he's got the fusion engine in there and he throws a banana in and some soda, and that generates all the power that he needs. And you don't need gasoline, you just have a fusion engine in your car. I mean, that type of stuff probably and likely already exists. We're just is not being made available to us. It's being controlled by the powers that be. We have stuff out there, and many of those who follow me or read my newsletter, I've presented some videos about some secret government projects and activity that have been going on for decades that are just kept away from us. So it's a power struggle among the elite, unfortunately. But to answer your question, in the mundane world, crude oil is still needed, and we're dependent on it. And until we can break that cycle with the new technology, unfortunately, it's still going to be in demand. So we'll see how it plays out. But the oil companies are still benefiting and paying some nice dividends in the meantime.
What's going on with bonds?
Well, the bond market, has been going down because of the economic debt situation, and then that drives interest rates up. And one of the reasons the bond buyback the Treasury Secretary announced this week was initiated was to try to keep the advance in interest rates and decline in bonds to a standstill. So ultimately, they're going to fail because they can't buy every bond back. The world doesn't want our bonds the way they used to. Most countries, including Japan, are not buying our bonds. It's really a very serious situation. It really is. So you have to be very careful where you keep your money. I don't know if your money in the bank is even safe. If you have physical assets like real estate, hopefully it's paid for, assuming the government doesn't try to confiscate that too, along with the metals, which they did back in the 1930s. But metals are the other alternative. And farmland, if you could have your own little place and grow your own stuff, not only will that preserve your ability to survive, but, preserve your assets at the same time. So I'm unfortunately, not too positive about our state of our future right now. And we're not even talking about war or anything else, just fiscal mismanagement and what's happening to our economy. So much of the stuff we see on the markets is manipulated. We've got the U.S. government plunge protection team out there and the equity stabilization fund and all this manipulation going on. And then you've got fraudulent exchanges like the COMEX, which traded gold and silver paper and not the actual physical. So I think you have to be, really careful about where the future is and how you try to protect yourself. You should keep a lot of cash around just to be safe in case there's some type of breakdown in the system. Another crisis like the COVID, which was, apparently intentionally created. Stocking up on some food and keeping cash around is not a bad idea in case something, unfortunately, which more likely will develop here, I think, over the near term. Outside of that, if you're short-term oriented, you want to trade the markets in the meantime, as long as we can do that, that's like a good idea as well. So there are always some tradable opportunities out there, both on the long and short side. Some of the areas that look still strong in the agricultural areas, the soybeans, the wheat, the corn, all the agricultural commodities have been rallying for good reason, not only because of shortage of fertilizer, but because of world demand and anticipation of higher, demand for scarcer products, and a lot of it is weather related as well. So I'm taking a very cautious view of the markets at this time and the state of the world.
We'll have more with Mark Leibovit right after this. Always consult your investment professional before making any investment decision. Welcome back. We're speaking with Mark Leibovit. Mark, anything happening on the cannabis front?
Yes, well, we're having a little action there. There was there was some activity the other day. One of the boards that was created to evaluate the timing of the rescheduling of cannabis. I don't have the exact name in front of me. I have to pull it up from my research screen, but apparently they did some interviews and stuff in July, and the August report came out, and this is all was triggered by Donald Trump's executive order to get the cannabis rescheduled from 1 down to 3. You know, some Democrats are even saying get rid of it altogether, which I don't agree with Democrats too often, but I definitely agree on that one. Just get rid of all the regulation whatsoever on cannabis, do like Canada did, just make it legal nationally and be done with it. But apparently that's not happening. We have a lot of short-sighted people, myopic people who are just thinking for either personal or religious reasons that you shouldn't have access to it. This reminds me of, the banning of alcohol before the Great Depression, Prohibition, and how that failed. You know, there's good use for alcohol and bad use for alcohol, just like there is for cannabis. And keep your nose in business out of what other people use or like to use. You can put out some regulations, obviously, related to minors and stuff like that, but the movement is toward that, and hopefully freeing up some of the banking activity, which would come clearly if it was nationally made legal, which is not going to happen overnight, but should come at some point. So some of the shares are upticking a little bit. There's a couple companies, I'm not going to mention names, but one looking to acquire another. Some consolidation in the cannabis space going on right now, or an attempt to do that. So I think you're going to see some price appreciation. And one of the big names, again, I'm not going to mention the name, was, over the counter and just got listed on the New York Stock Exchange. And the stock's been upticking, so that was a big break for cannabis, giving a legitimacy to a name which actually is a profitable company. The fact that it's now listed on the big board. So things are slowly and very tediously moving forward to the positive. So keep an eye on some of those shares. I think there's still a lot of upside potential.
Yeah, well, there's just the cost to government. I just Googled it. On any given day, 40,000 people are incarcerated in the U.S. for cannabis-related offenses. And it costs, what, $1,000 a day to keep a prisoner going? Or that's a lot of money for something other countries consider legal now.
Mental illness on a grand scale, all I can tell you, it's insane. I mean, it just has nothing to do with...
Although the U.S. has for-profit prisons, so maybe it's needed to keep the for-profit prisons going.
Right, and a couple of the for-profit prisons, there's a couple hot stocks out there. Again, I'm not going to mention names, you can look them up, but their stocks have been doing well. So some of the private prison stocks, a couple of big names have been doing well in recent months. Maybe there's a connection there, no question about it. So, yes, it's just insane. And in fact, you've got a bunch of states here in the U.S. that have legalized it, and many have not. And the fact that officially, based on federal law, it's illegal, which inhibits transactional activity, banking activity, and permits some of these crazy arrests and stuff that you would just refer to. So, there's a big argument, cannabis, it's an entry-level drug and you can't have it. And on the other hand, there's anecdotal evidence that it actually heals and helps a lot of people, particularly in the senior community. And many people that I have met have told me about their experiences, which were very positive, particularly if you live in a senior area like Phoenix and talk to people in places like Sun City, some of the retirement communities. You hear a lot of positive stories about it. So I would say regulators, keep your nose out of something that's been around for 5,000 years or God knows more, that has benefited people. Anything can be abused, no question about it. Look at the stock market. Manipulate the stock market, and that abuses people's finances. So there's all kinds of abuse at all different levels, believe me. So keep your nose out of cannabis is my opinion.
Are there any other areas we should be keeping a close eye on? I've seen Bitcoin has really risen.
I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't. I should have addressed that because we do have the blockchain letter. The cycles indicated a big top in Bitcoin last fall, and it said there would be a low coming this year, probably more toward the end of the third quarter, fourth quarter, and it looks like we bottomed early. And the way I'm reading the charts and the cycles, since I think some of the others share that, is you've seen the lows. Bitcoin went from 126,000 to 58,000, and now is back to 80,000. And if I'm correct, and I believe I am, that we can measure off that 58,000 low, and your next target is 158,000. And, it could be in the next year or two easily, or maybe even a lot higher than that. And not only that, you've got, well, it's still pending, but we have the Clarity Act legislation got stalled in the U.S. Senate because of some short-sighted Democrats who just want to stall things like they normally try to do in the U.S. Senate. But in any event, at the same time, the CFTC and the Securities and Exchange Commission got together with President Trump, and they're trying to devise policies and guidelines to get the crypto market moving, which it did just in the last week or so. If you watch, for example, XRP, which is one of the hot crypto stocks, it went up 50% in the last 2 weeks. So if you're there buying it, you would have seen if it was around $1, it went to $1.50. This is the last 2 weeks. So this is one of the big trading opportunities, but the potential on that is infinitely higher. And I'm not going to give out targets here, but I have higher targets for that too. So the Senate comes back in September, and hopefully they can get the Clarity Act passed at that time. We'll see if they will or not, but apparently the markets are anticipating it because other stocks in that industry, other companies related to the crypto world, and again, those are all mentioned in my blockchain letter, benefited here in recent week or two. So I guess the likelihood of the legislation being passed, and even not the fact that the CFTC and the SEC got together here in the U.S. to try to strengthen the regulatory environment, all came together. So it looks like you had the bottom in Bitcoin. It looks like with the passage of that legislation, things could really start moving forward in terms of usage and applicability for many of these, they call them altcoins. Those are the coins that are not the crypto coins. And things could start moving again. I mean, it's not just speculating in these things. They have practical applications in terms of commerce and everything else. So it's really an exciting time if you're in the Bitcoin in the crypto space.
Mark, thank you so much for chatting with us and being on Today in Money.
Thanks for having me, and talk to you next week.
My guest has been Mark Leibovit, editor and publisher of the Leibovit VR newsletter, also known as vrtrader.com. He was speaking to us from Arizona. If you have any questions for Mark or for any of our guests, you can send them to info@housestreet.com. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. You can find us on X @HouseStreet. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening. Comments made on Today in Money are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Today in Money is a production of House Street Media Incorporated. Executive producer, Tom Allen.